This tutorial is for 4th grade, Module 5, Lesson 3. In this lesson, we're going to look at fractions as the sum of unit fractions or as equal groups of unit fractions. The directions say to decompose each fraction as a sum of unit fractions, and then we'll write the equivalent multiplication sentence. So by sum, that means we need to write an addition problem. A unit fraction is a fraction that has a numerator of 1. For example, the fraction shown in this tape diagram is 3/4. The whole has been divided into 4 pieces. 3 of those pieces have been shaded. Each piece is considered a unit fraction because it's one of the pieces that makes up the whole. The addition problem has been written for us. 3/4 is the same thing as 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. Each of those 1/4 is a unit fraction. Now we need to write the equivalent multiplication sentence. Just as a reminder, when we write a multiplication sentence, the first factor is telling us how many groups we have. For example, if I had the problem 4 times 8, this would mean that I have 4 groups and that there are 8 in each group for a total of 32. So when we write our multiplication sentence, the first factor is going to tell us how many groups we have. Since we have 3 groups of 1/4, we will write 3 groups of 1/4, and that shows the multiplication problem 3 times 1/4. 3/4 is equal to 3 times 1/4. Let's look at another example. This time my whole has been divided into 5 pieces, and 2 of the pieces have been shaded to show 2/5. I'm going to write an addition problem showing us that 2/5 is made up of 1/5 plus 1/5. And again, each of those 1/5 is considered a unit fraction. It has a numerator of 1 and it identifies one piece that makes up the whole. To write my multiplication problem, I'm going to ask how many groups do I have? Well, I have 2 groups of 1/5. That means that 2/5 is equal to 2 times 1/5, or 2 groups of the unit fraction 1/5. In the next section, we're going to look at the fraction as 2 different pieces, and we're going to create a multiplication problem for each piece and then add those together. You can see in problem A here, I have 5/3 altogether. Since my numerator is greater than my denominator, I have more than one whole. So I'm going to break this into 2 different pieces. The first piece I'm going to look at is what makes up that one whole. Well, the one whole is made up of 3 groups, and each group is 1/3. Since the whole has been divided into 3 pieces. The second piece is made up of 2 groups, and each group is also 1/3. Now let's write the related multiplication sentence. 5/3 is the same thing as 3 groups of 1/3 plus 2 groups of 1/3. So this is showing me the sum, an addition problem, of 2 products of 2 multiplication problems. Here's another example doing the same thing. This time I have 6/4. I have more than one whole. I'll break it into 2 groups. The first group will be the fraction that makes up the one whole. Since the whole has been divided into fourths, I have 4 groups of 1/4. The second piece has 2 groups. I have 2 groups of 1/4. Now I'm going to show this as the sum of 2 multiplication problems. So I can say that 6/4 is the same thing as 4 times 1/4 plus 2 times 1/4. And in the last section, I'm going to show the fraction as a multiplication problem where I'm multiplying the unit fraction, and this time I'm not using any sort of visual. So I'm starting with the fraction 4/5. That means that I'm going to have 4 groups of 1/5, because the numerator is telling me I have 4 unit fractions. As a multiplication problem, that would be 4 times 1/5. 4 groups of 1/5 is equal to 4/5. In problem B, I have 5/8. That means I have 5 groups of the unit fraction 1/8. As a multiplication problem, that would be 5 times 1/8. 5 times 1/8 gives me 5/8. So you can see how multiplying the unit fraction is another way to decompose our given fractions.